Manager and the next assistant district manager liaison committee. In order to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe a few ground rules. One, no one may speak until granted the floor. Two, CB11 members, if you have a question about board business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand and wait to be recognized. Raise your hand through Zoom, click the participant's icon, and you will find the raise hand function there. If you have any technical difficulties, click the chat icon and relay your difficulty to the chat. Three, members should not engage in a back and forth discussion. The chair will recognize the next person to speak. Finally, the chat function for those that are attending and not in person should not be used for CB11 business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record when recognized. The chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you are having or sending writing information like an email address that was already stated loud on the record during the meeting. Five, when a member is given the floor to speak, I will identify you and you may unmute yourself so when you speak. Six, please keep your questions and comments succinct and remain for the discussion. Seven, members of the public. If you have any questions or comments about subjects on the agenda, please raise your hand and wait to be recognized. With that, we will now take attendance by roll call.
Jose,
Here.
Stephanie,
Here.
Adem, Jessica,
Present.
David,
Here.
John,
Here.
Giselle, Nelson,
Here.
Xavier,
Present.
Isaac. Jason is excused. Michelle,
Excuse.
yeah,
Thank you. We have quorum. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and was posted online. There's one change then. We will have one announcement from the Alliance from the Aid Society. If there are no objections, the agenda will be adopted as communicated. Are there any objections? Seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. Adopting the meeting minutes. The minutes from our last meeting were distributed to committee members ahead of time by the board office. If there are no objections, we will adopt the minutes from that meeting. Committee members, if you wish to object to adopting the minutes, and you raise your hand to be recognized. Seeing no hands, the minutes of last night's meeting are adopted. Tonight's meeting minutes are being taken by Jessica Elliott. Correct. Thank you very much, Jessica, for your assistance. Okay, we will now move on. And we have Isaac Scott, he is now present. Thank you. All right. We are now going to our announcements. Are there any announcements by the board members?
I live here.
Duly noted. Sorry. Okay, no hands raised, and Khalid, if you see any hands go up within the attendees, please let me know. Thank you. All right, we do have one announcement from Yolanda McBride from the Children's Aid Society. We will now recognize and give the floor to Yolanda.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Xavier. Thank you.
Welcome in a while.
And good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Yolanda McBride. I am the Director of Public Policy at Children's Aid. And I just wanted to come here tonight to just give you a quick update on what's happening with the rebuilding of the East Harlem Center, which is located on East 101st Street between Lexington and Park Avenues. The new center, as many of you are may be aware, some of you may not, will be part of a larger project that will include space for Mount Sinai offices, Life Changers Church, and also a new community center for Children's Aid, East Harlem Center. Just to give you a quick update, in February of this year, the property was transferred over to the developer for the rebuilding of the project, the overall project, and the developer has been prepping the site and preparing it for demolition. Starting next week, the developer will be demoing the current East Harlem Center, and also there's an adjacent townhouse next to the center that will, over the next 8 weeks, the developer will be demoing that. And we just wanted to let everyone know that there will be activity on the block on East 101st Street, where the current East Harlem Center is, between Monday to Friday, starting from 7 a.m. to about 4 or 5 p.m. each day, and some weekends activity when needed. And so we are getting an email out. We are working with the developer to ensure that there's just constant communication about the process for the residents on the block and also the businesses in the surrounding area. And our goal is to come back in the fall to do a larger presentation on the construction timeline and design plans when those are finalized. So I will put our informational website address in the chat. This is where we put all our kind of our meeting minutes, our Zoom meeting videos on the website for anyone that can see like what we've been talking about, how we've been updating folks about what's been happening with the project. And the website will be periodically updated on what's happening around the demolition process. So that's the update announcement I just wanted to give to everyone. And if there are questions, happy to answer those. But thank you for giving me this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Steph, recognize your question.
I'm just wondering, are those weekends gonna conflict with the open streets that's happening there as well?
Yeah, good question. The developer has been in contact with Carrie King, who is, and I think it's Uptown Ground Central, who organized the open streets. And so they've been in contact. We flagged it for the developer, and particularly when they have to do the weekend sessions, we flagged it for the developer to make sure that they're in constant contact. The businesses and Uptown Grand Central meet monthly. And so I do know for a fact that the developer did attend one meeting to kind of give an update on the process and what was happening, and to make sure that the businesses were aware of the construction, well, not the construction, but what the plans were around the demo process. But I will take that back. Happy to take that back.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Seeing that there's none, thank you very much for being with us this evening. Yolanda, appreciate your time. Okay. Moving along, we'll move into our presentations and discussions. And the first item up is request for no action notice related to Sharon NYC project transit easement. We have James Gisco, NYC HPD, with a lot of 10 minutes. James, are you with us?
Yes, hello everyone. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Executive Community Board members, thanks for having me on quickly tonight. So we're happy to report that the ULURP process for Sharon NYC, the 244 East 106th Street shared housing project, is moving smoothly through the ULURP process, but we do have a quick request from the Community Board. So HPD is seeking a certificate of transit easement, certification of transit easement volume. This is a zoning resolution certification, and it's essentially related to that the MTA does not require a transit easement on this site. It's a separate application through the zoning portal. And you should have been sent a referral letter today from the Department of City Planning. And so in order to move this project forward, HPD requests a no action letter from the Community Board. I have sent an example of one in the past to Angel. And yeah, I'm here to answer any questions related to that. This letter could be submitted through the ZAP portal. For the specific action that's being taken. It will be a separate application that will be reviewed by the City Planning Commission as they vote on Sharon NYC on August 9th. And in order for them to vote by August 9th, if it would be possible to have that letter by July 24th, that would be ideal to keep the ULURP process moving forward smoothly, but open to questions, discussion on this matter. But yeah, it's a simple request, no objection letter to the lack of need of a transit easement from the MTA.
All right, thank you very much for presenting, James. Are there any questions? Yes,
Can they repeat the address of the website?
James, did you
Yeah.
do that?
Yeah, it's 244 East 106th Street.
Thank you.
Technically, the existing lot is 242, but yeah, the new project is 244.
Thank you. So James, our understanding is that you're on a deadline crunch for this month, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, if we want to keep it on the existing schedule, the August 9th vote, we would need the letter. The Department of City Planning would need the letter by the 24th, if possible.
In light of the extenuating circumstances, is there a member who would like to make a motion on this matter? Just Bailey, you recognize?
Motion to provide a letter of no objection for Sharon OIC for the transit easement. No action notice.
So you'd like to issue a letter, no action notice, correct, with no objection to the Sharon OIC project transit, correct? Okay, is there a second? Jose? Okay, please call the roll.
Jose,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Madam, Jessica,
Yes.
David.
Yes.
John.
Aye.
Giselle,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Xavier,
Aye.
Isaac.
Yeah.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. Thank you, James.
All right, thank you all. Appreciate you having me tonight.
Thank you. Moving along, we have next up Tommy Vester, General Counsel for Manhattan Borough President's Office, who's going to give us a little bit more detail on the disability clause regarding open meetings law. Tommy, welcome.
Thank you. I don't know if I'm going to have a ton of more information for you, but I am happy to discuss the provision. So this is a new provision of state law that was added in this year's session. And what it essentially allows for is for meetings that are subject to open meeting law to meet quorum requirements for individuals participating remotely if they have what I'm going to call in shorthand a qualifying disability. The way disability is defined in the law is to make a reference to different provision of executive law, but essentially what needs to happen is that the person must have a physical or mental impairment that prevents the member from attending a meeting in person. So if the person has that qualifying disability, they're able to attend meetings remotely and still count towards quorum and otherwise participate in the meeting, including casting votes. The amendment is silent as to how a qualifying disability determination should be made and whether documentation must be provided to support claims of a qualifying disability. So my advice to the borough presidents and for the conduct of our borough board has been to, in order to meet this requirement, operationalize it, is that we will be asking those who are requesting to attend remotely based on this provision to self-certify. So essentially send us a document in writing signed attesting to the fact that they have a disability that meets the qualification described in the law. This approach, I feel, will minimize allegations of disparate treatment by different participants, and at the same time allow the MBPO to track claims without having to collect records that could be subject to protections under HIPAA. So what does this mean for our Manhattan community boards? Well, each individual community board must make its own determination as to how we'll implement the open meeting law section. But this provision does not require boards to provide members with a remote option, even if they have a qualifying disability. But community boards need to ensure that the application of this provision is fair and consistent. And if the community boards are providing for remote participation pursuant to other provisions of open meeting law, for example, due to extraordinary circumstances or during a state of emergency, then the board should allow for remote participation and for those with a qualifying disability as well. Finally, Should the boards begin collecting medical records to substantiate claims of a qualifying disability, they should ensure that there are protections in place to prevent the inadequate disclosure of sensitive health information. So that is my update. I don't know if others have any questions or if you'd like to discuss. Guys?
And this is a volunteer.
Wait, no, so start over again, because it was me doing it, get the lock back in.
Oh.
Can you hear us, Tommy, by any chance?
I can hear you now, but
You couldn't hear me before, you just saw them.
We were frozen for a minute, we lost connection, but.
Okay. Sorry about that.
It's us, don't worry about it.
Okay. So did you guys hear my full presentation until I asked for questions?
We missed,
Yes.
we missed a few minutes of it.
We heard the question part, but some of the meat of your presentation we didn't hear.
Okay.
So just so that you.
Yeah.
Right,
It was right after you said that people can self-certify by providing a document that certifies that they're meeting the requirements to avoid the look of you know,
just.
To meet the requirement. of
Disparate
an
treatment,
open-
yeah. Okay, so the second part was that Manhattan Community Board, how does this affect Manhattan Community Boards? Well, each individual Manhattan Community Board has to determine for itself how it's going to implement this section. This provision does not require community boards provide a remote option, even for those who have a qualifying disability. But you must ensure that the application of this provision is fair and consistent in order to mitigate legal risk. And I would also say that if you are offering remote participation pursuant to other provisions of open meetings law, such as the extraordinary circumstances or during a state of emergency, then the board should also allow for a remote option for those with a qualifying disability. If community boards do decide to establish a process for this, it should be codified in their bylaws or through a resolution. And finally, should a community board begin collecting medical records to substantiate claims of a qualifying disability, they should ensure that protections are in place to prevent the inadvertent disclosure of sensitive health information, which would constitute a violation of HIPAA. That was the rest of it.
Yeah.
Are there any questions? No,
Thank
sir.
you, because I was gonna say that since we have missed that piece. I was going to say that considering that we're volunteers and we're appointed and we, you know, most of our value has to do with the fact that we're from the community or work in the community. The fact that many people might balk if there's a requirement to supply medical records due to the fact that this is general office staff and it may not be bound by HIPAA regulations or other regulations that protect sensitive information. Nor can you ensure that there is not a leak of some kind in terms of that, so that might be something that might be problematic for a community board to adopt. So I hope that the community boards have leeway in terms of how they can document, or that a process is outlined more thoroughly by, let's say, the MDPO, so that they can be considered by the community boards when they are also adopting any kind of provisions for this. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, just to elaborate a little bit more on that, I will not be providing, you know, a preferred or recommended option beyond telling you what we are doing for borough board. You know, that is my recommended approach. That's the approach that I'm recommending to my client, the Manhattan Borough President, and therefore the approach that I would recommend community boards follow as well, which is not collecting medical records of community board members, and instead relying on a self-certification or self-attestation, just to say that they have one. But each individual community board is going to have to make that determination for itself. You know, within Manhattan, we have quite a variety of opinions within the boards as to kind of how strongly they feel about remote participation and remote participation by its members. And so some of them want to be really strict about it. And, others, I think, may agree with a kind of more lenient approach. So, each board has to decide for itself. I'm doing, these are my recommendations and what I think will carry the least amount of legal risk.
Any other questions? Yes, David?
Where do we find the list of the qualifying disabilities?
So
Where-
that is defined in the state law. Let me pull up the reference really quick. I just have to exit out.
It's on the state law.
Yeah, it's in state law and forgive me, just 1 second. Okay, it's in section 292 of the New York State Executive Law. But again, in summary, that's going to be a really long definition that might not make sense if read out of context. But what the shorthand or the I would say almost layman term version of that definition is going to be those who have a physical or mental impairment that prevents the member from attending the meeting in person.
Jose, then Seth.
Hi, Tommy. So what happens when a chair of a committee has a situation? What would be is it up to the community board, or does the borough president's office have a recommendation and push? Because at that point, then the entire meeting could be, on Zoom, which is what we've been using. So if the leadership of that's running the committee has this and gives in their self-certification, whatever it is, what happens at that point?
So at that point, then that individual can participate remotely, and they are able to count towards quorum and fully participate. Obviously, the community board has to
Could they run the committee virtually is a question.
I don't see why not. There might be technical limitations on that. To the extent that meetings are conducted either fully remotely or partially, there has to be kind of the equipment established for that. I would also say that again, the rules around how the community boards decide to implement this should be enshrined in either your bylaws or in your in a resolution. So it should be kind of clear as to if there are limitations on certain roles being able to exercise this. I think that should be documented. I think the concern here is about disparate treatment. So people saying, well, that person was allowed to do it, I wasn't, and concerns that way, that could lead to kind of litigation risk or legal risk in that respect. So I would just be mindful of that. But if it's, for example, committee chairs cannot exercise this option, I think there needs to be kind of an explanation as to the challenge or you should think about the challenges of why that is, and kind of have a justification for that limitation.
Thank you, Tommy. Steph, you had a question.
When is this going to be implemented by the borough president within the borough board?
Tomorrow.
For this, this is our approach for this borough board happening tomorrow morning.
When would community boards have to move forward in that manner or move forward in the manner of codifying bylaws?
That's this is the law today. And so in order for community board members to take advantage of it, the boards would have to pass resolutions or amend their bylaws. So that's on the whatever timeline that the community boards are working from.
Gotcha. So there's no end date. There's no end date but we just have to move forward in this manner. And okay.
Yeah, just like when we adjusted our bylaws during the
Gotcha.
pandemic for a hybrid solution.
Understood.
David.
So what happens if you have a committee meeting, just 11 people, and 6 of them submit their attestation and say they can't be there, and you have 5 there, then we don't have quorum. but she said it counts for quorum.
That's,
Mhm.
So how does that work if we don't have enough quorum on site?
There's no, so if people are exercising this option, there's no requirement to have quorum on site. And so it's different.
that's what I was asking. Hold on, so yeah, because the owl gets confused and then, so to clarify, I think if I understand David's question, that it makes it moot about having the in-person forum requirement at this point. If everyone has submitted their application, or self-certifying, if you will, that they have a disability that qualifies, correct, Tommy?
That's right. So I just want to be really clear here that there are two different provisions of open meeting law, section 103A, that allows for video conferencing. One is the section that deals with extraordinary circumstances, which allows members to participate remotely if they have extraordinary circumstances. But those are kind of one-off situations. Again, they're kind of like, I have a childcare issue is one of the ones that's listed in the law, or an acute medical situation. I have the flu, something like that. That would be an extraordinary circumstance. That in that instance, your board should have already had a resolution or amended the bylaws to account for extraordinary circumstances, because that provision has been around for at least, I think, a year. But the one that we're talking about now is an actual disability. So this would presumably be something that's a little bit more long-term. It's not acute, it's not a one-off. It would be, a chronic, usually like a type of chronic condition, or someone's getting cancer treatment, or they maybe they have surgery that prevents them from being able to walk upstairs for 6 months, something like that. So there are two different provisions. Extraordinary circumstance you cannot count towards quorum, but you can still vote. Under the disability provision, you can count towards quorum and vote.
Thank you for clarifying that. Steph, one more question.
So who from the community board, or who gives the confirmation that the requirement is met? Once I'm putting in a test, and I'm self-certifying that I meet this requirement, who then tells me, or who makes up the confirmation, like, yes, this is the case?
That's for your board to decide. In the case of the borough board, we are not kind of second guessing that. If someone submits an attestation, we're accepting that as valid and allowing them to participate remotely.
Tommy, would you mind sending the language you carved out as a recommendation to the MDPO, please? So we can mirror that language and take that up in September.
Okay.
That would be highly helpful.
Okay. Sure.
Any other questions, team? Okay, thank you, Tommy, for your time. Very much appreciated. We'll see you tomorrow morning for Borough Board.
All right. See you tomorrow. Thank you. Bye.
So when she sends over the language, team, I'm going to send it over to everyone, and we'll take that up in September to amend our bylaws and add more guidance on that. Yes, Steph.
I was just gonna say, it seems like we have to add two things. We have to add
The exhibit clause, which
Yeah.
we did not receive advisement on that at all. So.
ordinary circumstances.
So that's extraordinary. And the difference is that the long term allows you to count towards quorum and vote. The exigent does not allow you to count towards quorum, but allow you to vote remotely. So your vote can be counted, but you have to still maintain a physical quorum for the
To
meeting.
count the thing here.
So
Yep.
you would still have to say, for example, have 7. Someone has a childcare issue, they can still register their vote and participate, but not count for quorum. So we'll take on both of those items in September. Thank you.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is, but it's state law. Yeah. It's, yeah, there was a lot of that. Huh?
I said, we're still not gonna have nobody from the meeting.
No, we're gonna.
Everyone's.
They went from all of a sudden.
Yeah, especially if you have self.
It's something we should have a conversation about in September and come to decide at different points. I'm gonna move us along to see briefing on Metro North Plaza Gaylord White Houses Pact project. Chris Cirillo from Ascendant Neighborhood Development. Chris.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Good evening. The floor is yours.
Great, thank you. We have some slides, so I think Derek will be sharing.
Yeah. Hey, everyone.
Just while we're getting set up, thank you for making time to hear from us and our team this evening. This, presenting tonight came out of discussions that have been happening in the Community Board's Housing Committee over the last many months about various PACT projects and the PACT program in general, and developments in East Harlem that are going through the process now. And so as a follow-up to those more general conversations, we were talking with Angel and thought it would be good to come in and present one of the projects that we're working on. Ascendant is a member of two different PACT development teams, and we're here this evening to speak about one of those projects, which involves Metro North Plaza and the Gaylord White houses. And we are here with representatives from NYCHA and as well as the Community Builders, who is our development partner on the project. So next slide. So this is just a brief overview of what we're going to cover. Next slide. And I'm going to turn it over to Sam Levine from NYCHA, who's going to just give a quick overview of PAC for anyone who may not be completely familiar with it, and to set sort of the context for the discussion of the specific project we're going to review with you.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Chris. So what is PACT? As you may have seen recently updated, property needs assessment showed that there's $80 billion needed to fully renovate and modernize NYCHA's housing stock, but the federal government continues to only provide a fraction of this. PACT is a way that part of the rental assistance demonstration program that allows us to convert Section 9 housing to a more stable federally funded program called project-based Section 8. PAC unlocks funding to complete comprehensive repairs while keeping homes permanently affordable, ensuring residents have the same basic rights as they possess in the public housing program. Next slide. So how PAC works, PAC depends on public-private partnerships who are selected based on resident input. Through this program, we bring comprehensive repairs, professional management, and enhanced social services to these developments. The development partners, so in this case, Ascendant and TCB, bring design and construction expertise to address the physical needs of the development. There's professional management. So in this case, that would be Wavecrest that's being introduced. Property management partners responsible for day-to-day, while NYCHA maintains oversight of conditions and monitors conditions on the ground. Also, part of the program is the introduction of enhanced social services. So with input from residents and the tenant association, the development team helps select a partnership, a social service provider for partnership to improve on-site services and programming available to residents. It's important to note, though, that the developments remain under public control for NYCHA residents. So NYCHA continues to own the land and the buildings that the development is located on. They administer the Section 8 waitlist and subsidy and monitor conditions at the development. If necessary, NYCHA can also step in to resolve any issues or disagreements between residents and the new property management team. Next slide. One of the most important features of the program is that it preserves rights of residents and the basic protections. So as under Section 9, residents' rent will remain at 30% of their household income. They'll continue to have rights to organize. Resident associations continue to receive funding. They'll also have the right to renew leases. Applicants will not be rescreened, meaning they're automatically grandfathered into a Section 8 lease. Residents will also be able to add relatives onto their leases and have succession rights, passing on their apartments to relatives if desired. They'll continue to be able to have grievance hearings, and they'll have the opportunity to apply for jobs created by PACT under the Section 3 program. So I'll pass it back to Chris.
Great, thanks, Sam. Next slide. So getting more specific about the project that we're here to talk about this evening, which, as I mentioned before, involves Metro North Plaza, which is a complex including 3 buildings bounded by First Avenue, East 101st Street, and East 102nd Street, and the Gaylord White Houses, which is 1 building complex at the northwest corner of 2nd Avenue and East 104th Street, which also includes a number of community facility spaces operated by Union Settlement. And so this was a bundle of sites that was offered through round 10 of the PACT program. And so our team includes development partners, Ascendant Neighborhood Development, and the community builders. We are the development partners on the team. You've seen us here before. We're also partnered on the Beacon project, which is an HPD project on 120th Street, one of the East Harlem RFP sites. So this is our second collaboration together in the neighborhood, and Brian Backscheider from the community builders is here this evening as well. Our team also includes as our general contractor, MDG Design and Construction. And as Sam referenced, our property management company is Wavecrest Management. Our team additionally includes a number of design and sustainability consultants. So UAI is our lead design architect, assisted by Paul Castrucci Architects, who are focusing on the sustainability aspects and upgrades to both developments, working alongside Bright Power, which is a sustainability consultant, and Terrain is our landscape architect, who will be working with our team and the residents to think about upgrades and improvements to the grounds at both of the sites. Next slide. We know you have a lot on the agenda, so I'll kind of go through quickly. I think you all know who Ascendant is. We're based here in East Harlem. We're celebrating our 35th anniversary this year. Nonprofit organization. We have about 700 apartments in our portfolio currently, about another 600 new construction apartments in 4 projects that are moving through various stages of pre-development and ULURP. And working with TCB on this PACT project, as well as with some different partners on our PACT Round 11 project, the Jackie Robinson and Harlem Scattered sites. Next slide. So, you know, our team came together with a real interest in getting involved in the PACT program. Both Ascendant and TCB are nonprofit organizations, and so somewhat unique in the PACT program. There are not a lot of development teams that are 100% nonprofit, so we're excited about that aspect of this project. You know, as with all of our developments, putting resident and community needs first, really soliciting input and engagement from residents to determine the best course of action for how to rehabilitate the buildings, as well as how to improve management, security, and make other upgrades. We've been engaged with the residents since our team was designated, meeting regularly and going through all the different aspects of this project on a regular basis, and creating multiple avenues for generating input from residents. So I think, you know, we can move on to the next slide. And our partners on the property management and construction side have significant experience in the PACT program. Wavecrest and MDG have worked on 3 prior PACT projects as developers, as well as general contractors and property managers. On our team, they aren't part of the development team, but they are part of our overall team for the project. So they have significant experience working with NYCHA and working with residents in NYCHA developments to make this process, which is obviously a huge undertaking, go as smoothly as possible. The rehabilitation work will be happening while residents are in place, so that has to be coordinated very carefully. The management transition, when our team takes over and the conversion happens, is a very complicated process, and Wavecrest has significant experience having done that on 3 other very large PACT projects previously. Next slide. You know, just some examples. You know, I know many members of the community board have seen versions of this presentation or other PACT presentations, and many have also had a chance to tour completed projects. So, just showing some before and after images of work done on previous MDG and Wavecrest projects, some apartment upgrades. Next slide. Again, next. And some of the exterior work that's been done on prior projects to upgrade grounds and enhance resident quality of life. Next. So where we are in this process, our team was officially designated at the beginning of the year. We immediately began working with NYCHA and with the residents and resident leaders at both White and Metro North Plaza to lay out an ambitious schedule to get to a conversion that we are targeting for early in 2024. So this year has been spent thus far, 7 months in, doing inspections, touring the buildings, meeting with residents on a monthly basis. Where we are in the process now, as of the summer, is we have launched the social services needs assessment. Sam referenced this earlier. This is a key component to the PAC project. Obviously, the rehabilitation of the buildings is extremely important. The management transition is extremely important, but the social service plan is a key component of the PACT program as well. And so that process has started. I'll speak about that a little bit more in a few minutes. And that will lead to the creation of a draft social services plan that will be shared with residents in the fall for further feedback and then finalized so that we can have that plan in place in time for the conversion early next year. Also concurrent with the social services work, we're preparing to create model units in both of the developments so that residents can come to apartments in each of the developments to see what post-rehab apartments will look like with the upgraded finishes and fixtures. Inspections are going to be starting up. Well, we've been doing a lot of inspections for various purposes. There are a number of different types of inspections that our team has been undertaking. General inspections to assess conditions in the buildings, in apartments, in common areas, in the mechanical systems and the building envelopes. Inspections specific to certain hazards, mold, lead, radon, asbestos, in finding out where those things might exist in the building so that we can prepare a plan that will cover the mitigation of all those things. And then in the fall, as we get closer to the conversion, we'll be doing another round of inspections for housing quality standards, where we will be going in, assessing apartments, determining immediate repair and maintenance upgrade needs that have to happen before we can close on the financing and convert the project. So that work will be starting up in the fall and continuing through the winter as we gear up for the conversion next year. Also in the fall, we'll be starting to meet with residents with Wavecrest to go through the process for converting leases from Section 9 to Section 8 so that those are all in place in time for the conversion. Again, the conversion is slated for hopefully the first quarter of 2024. Construction will take approximately 2 years, and we hope to complete the project by early 2026. Next slide. So where we are in our resident meeting schedule, we did a kickoff meeting with residents of both developments in February. We've now started doing individual meetings with the residents of Gaylord White houses and the residents of Metro North Plaza so that residents can meet on site at their developments instead of having to come to one common location. But we've done meetings with residents going over unit inspections, scope of rehab work, going into doing design charrettes, getting feedback on the types of upgrades, the types of finishes that residents would like to see. We just had updates earlier this month going over the HQS process and the details from the design charrettes. And we're taking a break in August, and in September, we'll be gearing up again for meetings about leasing, then further in the fall, the social services draft plan, later in the fall, the final design plans, as well as a presentation about local hiring and job opportunities for NYCHA residents, that will come about through the construction process and the management transition. And then as we get closer to the conversion later this year and early into next year, more details about how that will work, how management will be handled once WavePress takes over, and what the construction process will look like as we have more details about what that schedule will be and when we'll be doing certain work in the different buildings. Next slide. So the resident social services needs assessment, we have contracted with LSA Family Health Service and Asian Americans for Equality to work with us to do the assessment. And so that involves a detailed multi-page survey that will be distributed to all residents. LSA and AFI will have staff on site. They'll be doing tabling in lobbies of the buildings, doing door knocking. And the goal is really to get the broadest possible participation in the survey to get the best data that we can about what needs residents have, what services they get currently on site, either folks coming from organizations into the buildings or the groups that currently operate facilities in those spaces. As I mentioned, Gaylord White has Union Settlements headquarters and main community center is located in that building. There's an early childhood center there. There's also a senior center there. And at Metro North Plaza, there are 2 early childhood centers as well. So, there are some current social service providers on site, but the goal of the social services assessment is really to make sure that we as the team that's going to be taking over understand all the needs that residents have and are identifying the right providers to be able to be on site or come on site once the conversion happens to make sure that any gaps in those service needs are being met. And I should have mentioned earlier on, all of our communications are being translated. We have translation services at all the resident meetings. The survey is being translated. And so it's available in English and Spanish, Mandarin and Cantonese. Our meetings have simultaneous translation to make sure that we are meeting the language needs of the residents of both of the developments. Next slide. So just a little bit more, I kind of spoke to this already, but this is just showing you like one page of the resident survey. It will inform the development of that draft social services plan, which we'll present back to the residents of both developments in the fall for their further feedback and refinement before we finalize it and implement it as part of the conversion. Next slide. Just a little more detail about the design charrette that we did within the last month at both sites, seeking resident input on interior finishes for kitchens and bathrooms that will go to inform the model units that we'll be constructing in the coming months. Feedback on common spaces, including lobbies, TA rooms, and other common areas that are unique to each of the 2 developments. Our landscape design team was there with questionnaires for residents to fill out about how they use the outdoor spaces at their developments now, what issues and concerns they have, what types of things they'd like to see that maybe aren't on site, and what would make those spaces feel better, work better, and feel safer, so that we can incorporate that into our design plans. And then also getting resident feedback about the kind of branding of the developments and also opportunities for incorporating public art, which is a priority for us at Ascendant with our public art program. And so finding ways where we can incorporate public art as we implement the overall rehabilitation projects. Next slide. And this information is provided in all of our presentations. It is on the left, all the contact information for our team, the Ascendant and TCB team. There is a project website that is updated regularly with copies of all the presentations from all the resident meetings, additional information that we have, information about the PACT program, and the schedule as we update it. So everything that we're kind of sharing out with residents is available on the website. We have a dedicated email address and phone number for people to get in contact with us. And then on the right, NYCHA has its own across the whole PACT program of all the different developments, a PACT website that has detail about all of them, the status of all of them, and how to get in contact with NYCHA staff with any PACT specific questions or concerns. And so that, I believe, is the end of our presentation, and all of us are here and happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much, Chris and team. Yes, you have a question.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Chris, for your presentation. I just have a question. In the transition of the lease term agreements, what is changing in the lease? Is the rent adjusted at all? And is there a risk for resident retention?
So as Sam mentioned, and Sam may want to jump in and make sure that I don't misstate, essentially all the protections that residents have under their current Section 9 leases remain the same and are incorporated into the new leases that they'll have with us, that'll be created and implemented by Wavecrest as the property management company moving forward as we transition the developments from Section 9 to Section 8.
And just to answer specifically the question about changes in rents. So the rent for the vast majority of residents, for anyone not currently paying a flat rent, which is a very small number of cases, rent continues to be set at 30% of household income, and NYCHA continues to certify this. So NYCHA continues to assume responsibility for certifying residents and setting rent for residents. So this does not get passed on to management or the development team.
Thank you.
Thank you. Steph, you have a question?
Is there a point person during the process when there's a switch from NYCHA to the new management team? Only because I can see like residents getting lost and confused and not signing the new lease with the new management. So I'm wondering, is there like a point person, and is there any way we can have that contact in case they come to the community board asking to reach out to someone we already know, who we can point them into the right direction to?
Yeah, I mean, we're happy to provide that information as we get closer to the lease signing. I mean, the part of the reason why we're starting that conversation in the fall, many months before the actual conversion happens, is to make sure that residents have sufficient time to come in and meet with Wavecrest, review the leases, ask any questions that they have. It's also a time for them to make sure that anybody who's in their apartment who might not be on their NYCHA lease to get on the NYCHA lease so that it transitions over, that they are supposed to be on the lease and should be on the lease moving forward. But yeah, what Wavecrest will have a point person overseeing all of this, and we're happy to make that information available and share it with Angel and the full community board. It'll be on our website so that anybody who has a question, will know who to contact and who the point person is.
I'm going to go to Nelson next. It would be helpful when you come back, maybe come to our housing committee and present the individual from Wavecrest and their liaison within NYCHA or Intergovernmental Affairs, whoever would be overseeing that. That would be helpful so that people have trusted members they know who to reach out to and are validated upon. So Nelson.
Hello, thank you for your presentation. A quick question. I know that this has come up with other RAC conversions where I specifically became aware of a question that was asked. And so one of the questions was when there's a conversion, I understand that, there's a transition between NYCHA and then let's say me in this example, Wavecrest. But there's always a confusion in terms of the tenant, or not always, but a specific tenant had asked a question of me. If you have an issue with the new property manager, right? Like, so for instance, if there's an issue with Wavecrest, other than NYCHA retaining the rights to the land and all that, is there a recourse for that tenant to potentially speak to the point person of NYCHA? Because there was always a fear that that the tenant or the fear in what was asked of me was that the tenant would have no recourse other than that property management. So if they felt that the property manager was not giving the correct information, or they didn't get a correct decision in their opinion, that they wanted to deal also with NYCHA, because NYCHA is supposed to be you know, still conducting some type of oversight. Is that a thing that will be in place, or is it that WaveQuest is the final determinant for any decisions made on behalf of the tenant?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to have our NYCHA colleagues can speak to how that works generally in the PAC program, but just to say, you know, TCB and Ascendant as the development partners, you know, will have oversight of Wavecrest. So as in any project where there's an outside property management company, the owners of the development team will have oversight. So if there's a concern about how Wavecrest is managing the property or a feeling that they're being non-responsive on some issue, the first recourse would obviously be to us to, you know, say, wait a minute, you know, we think something's happening with that's not right, or, you know, we have an issue that's not being addressed. But NYCHA does retain oversight over all the PAC developments and the PAC teams. You know, Sam or someone from NYCHA can maybe speak to how that process works, if there's a specific person or part of NYCHA, like once the conversion happens, where those types of concerns get addressed.
Yeah, I'd be happy to speak to that, Chris. And hi, everyone. My name is Justin Lamorella. I work with Sam in the real estate development department. And that's right. So within real estate, we have a whole division that we've created called asset management. And their role really starts around the time of the PAC conversion. And so they are really there to oversee the PAC team and making sure that they're following all of the commitments and agreements that they made throughout the planning process. They're there on site. They form relationships with the resident leaders. They conduct surveys and you know, that go not just that don't just deal with the construction side of things, but also around property management, around social services. And you know, if there are issues like that arise, you know, they are sort of the point of contact to step in and help to resolve them. And so that's something that will, you know, at the point of conversion here at Metro North Plaza and Gaylord White would be available to residents. So hopefully that helps to allay any residents' concerns around that.
Yeah.
And I just want to correct a quick small point, just a technicality. The development team is not the new owner of the building. NYCHA continues to be the owner of both the building and the grounds. So I think Chris said that, you know, owner was used. I just want to clarify that there's not a transfer of ownership away from NYCHA. It is still a publicly held property.
Sorry for the misspeaking.
Thank you for that clarification. Giselle, you had a question.
Thank you, Chris, for your presentation. There's 3 parts to my question. The first one is, are you guys starting the local hiring in November, or have you already started it? The second question is, how is the local hiring gonna go about? How are you guys gonna do that? Like, what's the process? And 3 is, can we, like, local hiring is something that we're very invested in on the board. So how can we help you? How can we be a part, spread the word? Anything that we can do?
Yeah, I mean, so we as part of this process, we'll be developing a whole local hiring plan. So it's still a work in progress, and that's why we'll be presenting more about it in the fall. But obviously, you know, we do a lot of work in East Harlem, have a lot of projects that have come before the community board, and we know that the community board takes that very seriously. And so obviously, you know, want to be able to share information about it and share opportunities out and share that information with the community board. So, you know, we're happy to come back in the fall when we have a little more detail about that and talk about ways that we can work together to make sure that those opportunities are, you know, ones that neighborhood residents can take advantage of. Obviously, a big component of NYCHA related work is creating opportunities for NYCHA residents themselves. So residents of the developments or other NYCHA developments. Obviously, we know there are a lot in East Harlem, but certainly if there are opportunities that are available that other local residents can take advantage of, we want to make sure that those that information gets shared as widely as possible. So sharing it through the community board, coming to the economic development committee. Happy to do all of that.
Wonderful, thank you. So it sounds like you have two committees. Yes, John.
Thank you, Chris, for the presentation. I have a question about the meetings that you've had with the residents. How has resident turnout been?
I have to say resident turnout has been really, really strong. We for the White Houses, the White Houses is the tower that is connected to the Union Settlement main community center on 104th Street. And so we use the large meeting room on the ground floor there. If you've ever been in, it's a very large space. And I think for almost all of our meetings, it's been really packed. So we've been really happy. Those meetings, that's a senior development. And so those meetings we have in the afternoons, and we seem to get very good turnout for those. We've been doing evening meetings at Metro North Plaza. And we've kind of been working with, there's not really a good, at the moment, unfortunately, a good meeting space in any of the Metro North buildings. It's actually one of the main requests from the resident leadership is that we, as part of the rehab project, we need to create more spaces where residents can meet in their own buildings. But there's a church on 101st Street that is sort of surrounded by the Metro North Plaza campus. And they have graciously allowed us to have our resident meetings there. So it's really almost on site for residents. And those meetings have had really robust turnout as well. We had our most recent one there last week, and the room was pretty packed with folks, and they stayed for the full 2 hours and were very vocal and provided a lot of great feedback and input. So, I would say that I think we're getting good turnout and good response. And we welcome any suggestions on ways that we can do more. But I think we've been seeing a lot of folks come out and engage and repeat visitors, and know that folks often take materials back. So we do presentations like this in all the meetings. They're posted on the website, but we also have printed copies and translated copies. And often residents will walk out with extra copies that they're taking to their neighbors and friends in the building. So we know that hopefully the information is getting spread out further, even to folks who aren't able to make it in person to the meetings.
Thank you very much. We've spent quite a bit of time on this subject. Do we have hands raised?
Yeah. Yes, we have 2 hands raised.
I'll recognize 2 hands, 3 questions, and we're going to move the agenda along to our next subject. Who was up first?
We have a Ruthie. Ruthie was first. We can allow them to speak. Ruthie, you have permission to speak. You can unmute yourself and ask your question if you'd like.
I didn't have a question.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Ruthie.
Okay.
Beverly McFarland, one of our new board members. Bev?
Yes, good evening. I'm sorry I was late. I had a procedure today. But the question I have with this PAC conversions, or I know Section 8, these vouchers, are these TPV vouchers, tenant protection vouchers that you are using on these PAC conversions?
Chris?
Maybe Nitro can say, it's project-based Section 8 vouchers.
Are they TPV vouchers, tenant protection vouchers that holds the Section 18? Because a lot of, as we can see in Chelsea Elliott, those conversions can come with demolition and demolishment after you find out the cost analysis of these conversions. That's why I asked.
Okay, maybe Nitro wants to jump in and answer that question, because I'm not completely sure of the answer.
Yeah, I mean, so the program uses the project-based Section 8 program, which is not the same as the mobile voucher, which is maybe what you're referring to with the TPV. And so with the project-based, it means that the development itself receives the vouchers, and the residents are protected in place through the subsidy.
And another question I have is because Section 8 vouchers are right to size. Will y'all be exercising the right to size in terms of if we have a resident in the development that, you know, a lot of these residents been in their apartments for 40 years and raised their children, and they have 3 bedrooms, and now they are, you know, the seniors are single. Are y'all exercising the right to size, which is under Section 8, to downsize these families? And are y'all explaining this to your resident or to the residents?
Yes, I mean, that is a component of the program. So the White Houses is a senior building, so all of the apartments there are 1 bedrooms or studios. But Metro North Plaza is a range of apartment sizes, and there is a process in place and regulations governing how that process gets implemented. But as part of the process, I mean, it has come up and we've discussed it in meetings. So I think, you know, the residents are aware that a component of the Section 8 program is a right sizing component. But obviously the goal is to work with residents. You know, appropriate relocation apartments have to be available. So no one is displaced from their apartment if there isn't an apartment for them to move into that is a more appropriate size. So obviously the goal of our team and Wavecrest and NYCHA would be to work with residents to see if there are, you know, when there are appropriate opportunities as the rehab gets done, for folks who might be in larger size apartments who could stay in the same development but move into a smaller apartment and therefore create an opening and a vacancy in a larger apartment that might be more appropriate for a household that needs a larger size.
So what happens when you have more residents?
Beverly, I'm gonna move the meeting along, and I would like.
Thank you.
Yeah, just because we spent a sizable amount of time, but Chris and Justin, I would appreciate, and John, if you would entertain it. I would love to have this, you all come and present and talk about this part of the process at the Housing Committee meeting in September. I think there's a lot of value in it, and for people who really, to demystify the whole process, so that people know that their checks and balances, they're covered, they're protected, just so much that advising people to get added onto the lease while they're still with NYCHA, that you're pushing that messaging forward as one example. So think you can make that happen for us?
You know us, we're like regular visitors, so.
Good. Excellent. We will see you then. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along, we're going to go to the refresher on affordable housing development goals of East Harlem neighborhood plan. And we have George James, our CB11 land use consultant. George, thank you for your patience.
No problem, glad to be here. Angel, can I share my screen?
Georgie, okay, good.
All right, I'm assuming everybody can see that. Okay, so I'm going to start with a little background because I know not everybody was around when we all went through this. But the East Harlem Neighborhood Plan was published in 2016. So this is a copy of the cover, but it was built on work that was done in 2014 and 2015. It involved many East Harlem institutions and agencies. This is the list of contributors in the front, and it's a very, very long list. And it was supported by this extensive public engagement process. There were hundreds of people who participated in it. There were 7 neighborhood-wide meetings. And it was broken into these 12 different topics. Each of these topics was discussed at one or more of the meetings. And ultimately, each topic area had recommendations that were approved by the steering committee in a very formalized way and very detailed recommendations. If you look at the East Harlem Neighborhood Plan, really most of it are these recommendations. And really that's what we're going to focus in on today. But in addition to that, the East Harlem Neighborhood Plan identified the public sites that would be in focus, including both public sites that were considered active at the time and pipeline sites, meaning sites that had already started the process in 2015. But the 6 public sites identified: Urban Assembly School at 127th Street, Las Raices, DSNY parking lot on 123rd Street, DSNY 99th Street garage over here, the Park Avenue parking lot, NYPD Park Avenue parking lot up here, and the multi-service center. Those were the 6. And the plan included the following recommendations for the development of these public sites. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to read through the actual recommendations. There are a few of them that are relevant to the issues at hand in front of the community board. I'm just going to read them. So the very first recommendation: community's goal is to build off of the affordability that will be required on private rezoned sites under MIH policy, with the recommendation of 100% affordable on public sites. These efforts combined will enable at least 50% of the new housing on private rezoned and public sites to be affordable at a variety of low and moderate income levels. So again, that's like you're taking the what you get from MIH, you combine it with 100% from the public sites, and you end up with around 50% affordability, or at least rent regulated units in the total housing. Recommendation 1.4, assure a permanent affordability in units created through MIH and developed on public sites. 2.1, exclusively public sites should be built with 100% affordable units, and these units should be required to reach deep and varied levels of affordability of up to 130% of AMI, and to establish a target of at least 20% of the units at or below 30% of AMI. Public sites should be developed at higher densities, such as R8A on narrow streets and R10 on wider streets, to maximize affordability. RFPs for public sites should require maximum and deep affordability, require permanent affordability strategies, require that developments meet community-defined program and design requirements, including those for open space, community facilities, and housing for the homeless. Encourage that HPD require involvement of locally based nonprofit developers and owners. Explore the potential for the conveyance of vacant, underutilized city-owned land to a community land trust. Okay, now I'm going to talk a little bit about what it says about supportive housing, because supportive housing is part of a couple of the recommendations. First, increase funding for HIV prevention programming and services in East Harlem. Increase the number of supportive housing units for those living with HIV/AIDS, and or make this cohort the primary set aside for supportive housing units in East Harlem. Next, seek to create more supportive housing and ensure that it is built in conjunction with experienced nonprofit supportive housing providers and for those groups most in need in the district, as identified by the community board. So back to the public sites for a second, while there's been some progress on these sites. Several are stalled or have never started, right? There are several that were examined, especially the DSNY sites. No action has been taken, and it's unclear whether any action will be taken on any of these sites. Several have been done. Some are partially done, like the MEC site on 125th Street. The plan's goal of 50% affordability, when you combine private and public together, is likely not reachable without more of these sites being developed. I haven't done the math on it, but the way the math worked at the time, as I recall, you really needed most or all of the sites that were identified to be developed as public sites to be developed to make the numbers work. And this is not enough. The East Harlem Neighborhood Plan does not provide detailed recommendations for the ongoing substance abuse crisis. There is a safety topic area, and drug use is mentioned along with other challenges. It says services for job training, mental health, domestic abuse, and drug use need to be assessed in terms of availability and effectiveness in order to address underlying social conditions. Drug use is also mentioned as part of the history. The neighborhood was one of the hardest hit in the 1960s and 70s as New York City struggled with deficits, race riots, urban flight, gang warfare, drug abuse, crime, and poverty. So, just in summary, the plan calls for more supportive housing that specifically involves experienced not-for-profit supportive housing developers, is for those living with HIV/AIDS and other groups most in need in the district, as identified by the community board, which I actually didn't remember that until I found it. And it's interesting because this document is not solely a community board document. There were several project partners on this, and it is a document that is controlled by all of them, which ceded the identification solely to the community board. Okay, and then finally, my last point here is that East Harlem Neighborhood Plan is still relevant, but in my opinion, it needs to be updated at some point. It's something that you all should think about to reflect current conditions and priorities. The updated East Harlem Neighborhood Plan could address, the areas that were identified for MIH that were never rezoned in 2017. That was, a large chunk, especially in the south of the district. Other zoning concepts that were never addressed. One of my favorites was the special East Harlem Garden District, which never got any traction. And then, probably most materially, the abandoned installed public sites. Can more attention be brought to these? Anything to move them along? Specific public safety and quality of life concerns related to ongoing drug abuse crisis that I think I've been hearing a lot about. The Second Avenue subway construction and takings that are happening, and are those plans that the MTA has for those key sites correct? Resiliency, we have the East Harlem Resiliency Plan, which we've only seen the summary of. Can we get more information from that to build a more resilient East Harlem? And a host of other issues, many of which that I'm sure could come from all of you. But it's a wonderful starting point. It's still relevant, but it's something that definitely could be brought up to date. That's it.
Thank you very much, George. Are there any questions from our committee? Yes, Jess.
What is the special garden district?
I'm glad you asked. Let's go, George.
So the idea of that was you have, especially on the east side of the district, a number of community gardens. And so the idea was that you could, and a lot of them don't have the green thumb protection, right? They're actually, HPD controlled or, could be developed in theory at some point. And so the idea was that you could transfer the floor area off those sites so that they could be preserved as community gardens. And they could go, that floor area could go more than just to the adjacent zoning lots. It could cross the street or go into within the East Harlem garden district. Is a way of preserving community gardens and the character they bring while not losing the development rights of the space that they occupy.
Any other questions? Thank you, George. We thought in conversation to be helpful, because to refresh our memories for a lot of us who went through the rezoning process, but since it's been 6 years nearly, to be able to have a refresher on it and really remind ourselves the purpose of it. And you brought up a good point with the southern part of the district, as we had one of those items we were pushing to go as far south as the bus depot in Lexington houses, because of the antiquated zoning down there, which we're now seeing what's come to fruition with the development in the southern part of the district.
Yes.
Also, I appreciate you calling out the fact that the stall developments, for example, tomorrow we'll be taking a tour finally of the temporary sanitation garage, the consolidated garage, to actually see what's happening there. And that's another area that's stalled that we need to push DSNY to keep their commitments, and also to carving out the difference of the developments and whether we're getting 100% of what we want and what we've requested and what we've defined. So I think that's an important distinction you drew out.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I just, if there's one thing, the whole DSNY situation, I think is the thing that is the biggest surprise that they stalled, right? The school that was identified, well, they're still using the school, right? And that's fine. But the DSNY sites, they're largely parking lots, they're largely empty, they're very underutilized, and they were building this facility, the new facility to house this stuff. So, and the point was that you get a new facility, they house their things there, so that means that these public sites can support development within the community and support new housing in the community. And what do you get? You get actually a bigger DSNY footprint in the district, which wasn't right. I mean, that's so, if there's one thing to take out of this, that's the point really to focus in my humble opinion.
Thank you, George. Okay, great. Any questions from the committee members?
An assembly member Gibbs' office, they have their hand raised, but nobody else.
Yes, the representative from Assemblyman Gibbs' office, please identify yourself for the record.
Hi, my name is America Munoz. I'm the Deputy Chief of Staff. I had a question about the Urban Assembly School being used as a part of this development. How would the school be affected? Like, would the school have to relocate? Are they planning to use that school building, or just to hear a little bit more about the effects that the school would undergo?
Sure, I can talk about the ideas at the time. Was that, it's a full block site, and it is a school that is developed without windows in classrooms. It was experimental design at the time when it was developed in the 1960s. And the idea was that a new school and development could be built there that would not only house families, but also be a better school for the children that went there. The idea it would be that the school would move and it would be redeveloped and it would move back in over time. That hasn't happened, and the Department of Education hasn't stated that that's really in the works. But that was something that was identified by the community back in 2015 and written into the plan.
Thank you. Thank you for explaining that. So committee, what I would like as we go into the fall, take a look at the EHMB, review it, and look at the differences that the various developments, what's installed. Also look at areas we can update to revise our position to what the community board wants, and engage the community. I think that's a really great recommendation, George. So thank you very much for that and taking the time with us.
Oh, my pleasure.
We appreciate your passion. Thank you. All right, we're going to move along to our committee action items. Dem, I've reviewed everything. If you want to run us through, because typically this would have been brought to our licensing and permit committee last month. Circumstance, right? So guys, we're going to move along pretty quickly through these. So.
I mean, so one is a corporate change. I believe they have everything. Number two is they were actually here, I think, when we met last time in the office. They were the one with the 311s on First Avenue. They had all their documents then. But I think the question is, we, I think, denied them because we had issues with the 311s. There was some answers being given by the owner that weren't really going with what the rep was saying on the same phone call. I don't know if we're gonna want to dive more into that one. There's number 3 is a renewal. I believe they have all their documents. Just when I looked quickly, I noticed that they say that they're within whatever it is 200 feet of a church. But when I looked at older applications from them, there is no mention of there being a church that there's 200 feet away from them. So I don't know if it's a new church or they just realized that they're 200 feet away. What's more interesting is now that they acknowledge that there's a church, the next question is, did you notify the church? And they said no. So while it's a standard renewal, you know, we only go by what they said. When I looked, I think at 2021, which would have been their last renewal, I didn't see anything mentioned about a church. I also, and I could be wrong, I don't think they came in the interim for any kind of method of operation. I don't believe they ever said they were gonna have live music. They're saying that they're gonna have live music now. I don't believe that that's a change you can just make with a renewal. That's number 3. Number 4 is a new application. I believe they have everything. My only concern on this one is that they're asking to be open till 4 AM, 7 days a week. And when I Google search the location, it's on 130th Street. It looks like it's like in a 4-story walk-up residential. I think right now the place closes at midnight. I could understand getting your liquor license and wanting to probably stay open a little bit later. But I'm hesitant, especially with somebody who has not, anybody who has not had a liquor license, to just give them a 4 AM, 7 days a week, to start with. That's for that one. I don't know if you want me to then also just run through the.
Let's knock out.
Okay. Those were my notes. I figured.
So number 1 provided everything for a corporate chain. That is,
Yeah.
that's when they had our tropical grill corporate,
As
correct?
far as I know, yeah.
And that's number 1253723. And they provided everything. Number 2 was in application La Benita Deli. They presented-
Huh? This is number 3.
Yep.
So they presented to us last month. Thank you, Jose, for your assistance, and we saw that there was a disconnect with what the representation was saying versus what the owner was saying, and they were contradicting each other. But they're back here for discussion if we so choose. Otherwise, that was approved as a denial. Number 3, host a local, doing business with Avenida, new application. That's the one you were just clarifying that they provided everything now. However, there's the question about the church, correct with them?
Yeah, and Jose brings it up. I'm not far from them. I don't know the church that's. I don't think there's no church 200 feet.
Okay, so, but it,
I don't know if there's an error.
but they provided everything now, correct? Okay. So
They have everything else. They have everything, and then the only other one with that was the addition of live music. I don't think it was on the old thing. It's not saying they can't have it. I just don't know. I think you'd have to go to a method of operation for that. If you didn't have live music and you wanted live music, you cannot use a renewal as a way to like change your license as far as.
No, I can't. So we're gonna, and then finally, the corner lounge, 1 LLC, guys, hold on. Because it's gonna, the owl's just gonna spin around, like, it doesn't have an egg. Spin right off. Okay, Corner Lounge 1 LLC doing business, the Corner Lounge. This is when you had a question is the operation hours, right?
Well, they're new. I believe they have everything, but it's just the hours.
So, all right. We'll go back to the first one, just so there's no confusion. Number 1 on energy, these are there 4, so we're gonna do these individually. The rest of the street activities we can bundle, because those are pretty straightforward. So the 1, they provided everything. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a
Dan,
I'll make a motion to approve the corporate change for secondary tropical.
all right, second by Jose, please call the roll.
Jose,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Adam,
Yes.
Jessica,
Yeah.
David,
Yes.
John,
Aye.
Giselle,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Xavier.
Yes.
Isaac.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. The next one is the same application we denied last month. We still have the question of the 3311s. We denied it because they didn't provide the materials last month. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I believe when we had asked if there was music, we were told there's just a TV. Then we asked if the music was played on that TV and they said no, so then there was like other music, it was just and then. Basically, when I believe when they came to the committee, I said to them, we're not gonna deny you because you have 33 but you need to give us why this is happening, tell us what measures will be taken, but they seem to just keep saying it's not them. And I don't know on that block off the top of my head, Jose, who else it would be the source of. Right, I live the laundromat.
So do we wish to change our position from last month?
Are they here?
Are they here?
No.
Are any of the applicants?
They're not here, then nothing.
It would be the applicant's name.
I see, Felipe Lopez.
Lopez, there is a.
And
It was somebody from ABC licensing, I believe it was a woman.
okay, hold on, guys, I crossed off. Go ahead. Felipe Lopez has his hand raised.
Felipe, you have the ability to speak. Go ahead.
Hello? Hello, do you hear me?
We hear you, Felipe.
Oh, hi, I am the manager from La Costañita Deli. And I mean, we had issues all the time because of the neighbors call that we make noise and whatever. But I mean, it's been always, since we took over this place, always it's been the same issue from one of the neighbors from second floor. Even on a Saturday night when we were doing construction, she was always coming down, hey, you guys, stop like knocking or whatever. I mean, it's been an issue all the time. Like last year, we had every Thursday, a police standing outside our door just to see who was, like calling. And that cannot be happening. I mean, most of the times it's that, but it's not noise, it's just the TV. And it's also a very old building that is not a soundproof. You understand? I mean, any noise can be here.
Okay. Committee members, do you have any questions?
So I do have a question.
Yes,
So Felipe, you think, so you're just saying it's probably just like one neighbor that's making all
I mean,
this?
it's not one neighbor. It's two neighbors. I mean, that we always have the same problem all the time, calling anytime, morning, nighttime, and police most of the times come, but there is no noise. I mean, it's just the TV. I mean, the TV sound just to keep us, like awake, or isn't even bored just watching TV, basically. I mean, we've been there for 3-4 years in that place, and it's always the same two neighbors that complain all the time.
Have you taken any, I'm sorry, have you taken any steps to sort of work with them?
Yeah, we worked with them. Before we had like she was calling us, from her cell phone to the store number, and I say, if you hear any noise, just let us know. So we know that we're making noise or whatever, but it's not even noise. Police always come and see, and they just it's waste of time for everyone,
Jess, your question.
But I can go. I mean, I know the sergeant. He was every Thursday on duty, and he was like just standing outside for a month because just wanted to know. We wanted to solve that problem, but that was like last year.
Okay, Jess had a question, one of our committee members. Jess?
Thank you, Felipe. I just had a question about, you mentioned that there was construction work being done on the weekend, and that was one of the sources of complaints.
Also, yeah, like Saturdays we were doing, not a construction, but I mean like making a wall or the things for the shelving on top, And she was coming down, hey, you guys making too much noise, whatever. And that was I think the second floor, I think it's like B and C or something. And like before we took over, they had the same issue. That's why the guy sold us the place to us. But they gotta understand that it's a commercial place too, and I mean, it's a lot of traffic and people, it's not just us.
Yes, you have a follow-up. So Felipe, I have a question if none of the other committee members do. If the TV is what you're complaining about, the people above, your neighbors,
Right,
how about turning it down and keeping it down for an extended period of time?
because the TV is just right on the wall, but I mean, if it is that an issue, we can move it. But we had it on another side on the other corner, and it was the same issue with one of the right on the top guys,
I'm talking about the volume. Turning it
But
down.
I mean, the TV it's not even a smart TV, it's just a regular TV that is like 32 inches. It cannot be that very loud, it's just all the
Okay,
time.
right. Thank you, Felipe. Dan, and then.
Is the TV the only source of noise? Because last month, somebody else from your establishment said that you also play background music and that is not coming from the TV.
But that,
Hi, this is Ellen from ABC License. We did say it was background music because the TV, and he said he was they were gonna have a little radio. It's not
Ellen,
a.
Ellen, I haven't recognized you, Ellen. I will come to you
Hi.
next.
And I spoke to Mr. Phillip is
Oh,
not.
Ellen,
it's husband and
you've not
wife.
been, Ellen, you've not been recognized. I'm gonna ask you to wait and let it down, ask his question. Thank you, and then we'll go in order. Thank you.
Well, I think, Ellen, the big issue last month was that you originally said the music was from the TV, and then your client said that they also played music. So it wasn't just that, it was that the story wasn't straight, and then the problem with that becomes accountability. If you're not gonna just acknowledge what might be going on that's causing the problem, then the problem cannot be fixed. The idea here is not to give you a liquor license to try to fix this. The idea is, how do you get a liquor license, but we ensure that these problems don't continue? That's really what this committee and my committee, I think, are trying to do.
All right. I have a question from Nelson, and then I will go to recognize Ellen. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for being here, again. So I work in that area, and so when I passed by it, I got the impression from the last presentation that it was alleged that it was other neighboring businesses or something like that that may have been causing the problem. There are no neighboring businesses that can make the kind of complaints alleged here, because there's a laundromat and then there's you in the middle of the block and you have to like 2 stairs and it looks almost like a little store. So I'm not sure what the layout is in the back. So I'm not, and then there's Ellen's Kitchen that's usually not open a lot. And then you have the corner. So my question is, just from what's being said today, is it your contention that the noise complaints are just coming from residents in that building? Because that wasn't the impression that I got last time. So, I'd like a little bit of clarity on that, because if it's bigger than it appears from when you first go in, and I do know that there are sometimes people who hang out in front of your business. I'm just trying to get a sense of how this is noise proofed, so that we can, look further into this, because, if the neighbors keep calling in these complaints and nothing has changed, or there's not clarity, then I'm not quite sure how we, like Adam says, how we can help to resolve the issue so that you get what you want and the neighbors also get what they want.
Ellen, you're recognized to respond.
Yes, I asked the husband to go down to the police station, since there was a sergeant who stood there for a month because there was multiple complaints, and when he came, he said there's no source of, he doesn't find the noise to be to a volume of to a complaint level, and he acknowledged, you have a elderly tenant who's not happy with his operation, and she complains. Yes, and the sergeant is willing to write a letter, and he said he spoke to the sergeant last week. Would you be able to assist us and relay what happened when he was there for multiple times, and what you saw and what you heard? And the sergeant said yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Committee members, do you have any other questions? Yes, Jose.
Most of the complaints are late night, particularly like after 11 PM. I mean, are they willing to not have TV and radio on after a particular hour? Because, I mean, some of these complaints are like 1 in the morning, 4 in the morning. There's only one that's in the afternoon, but majority, they're 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning, 2:30 in the morning. And I know that Ellen now has a copy of it as well as the client, but there is an issue with the timing, right? I mean, at that time, there shouldn't be noise, no matter what the business is. You know, either that or they're gonna have to look into soundproofing, but I mean, that's, you know, an expensive option. But are they willing to commit? You know, could we put something where they have to commit to not make noise after a particular time? I don't know, that's
Make a stipulation, I mean.
yes, Angel.
So their application and their stipulation forms say that their hours of operation are 8 to 10. Are those the intended hours of operation? Because if so, then all these calls are post 10 o'clock. And if you're open past 10 o'clock, which contradicts your application, then that's another question. And puts another issue as to the veracity of your application now for the second meeting in a row. So which one is it? What time are you open until?
We usually open until midnight.
What your application says 10 o'clock.
Well, I mean, we usually open midnight. I mean, but that's Monday to Friday. But we don't go late than that. Basically, most of the times the door is closed. You know, but
Yeah.
I mean, what the whole? I mean, when you say problems, I mean, problems means just phone calls. It's not any violence or anything like that in that store. I mean, it's a lot of, I mean, First Avenue, if you know First Avenue, is a lot of traffic of homeless people and things like that, and they just hanging outside. And this is one of the things that we really want to do. If, you know, somebody's coming to our place, at least have the time to enjoy their food and have a beer, you know, where they're not going to get any ticket or something like that, you know.
Okay, thank you, Felipe. I think we've heard an extensive amount of the application both last month and this month, and I'd like to see where the committee stands on this, given the new information and the fact that the application is for 10 PM, not midnight, not 1. And we understand what you're saying, then that would have to be reflected in the application, and we hold every business fairly in our process. That's the way we conduct everything. So committee, that's just the process. We've done this and we've been very fair all the way along, but again, we have a lot of questions that remain unanswered, but I'd like the committee needs to take a position again now that we have all the documents. Committee.
Okay.
You never.
Ellen did speak. Do you have a follow-up, Ellen?
As far as the hours go, I based the application was based on the information that was provided, because sometimes she says she doesn't even open up till 7, 8 o'clock when we were there to take the photos. She did not open up till 10 AM in the mornings, because I asked them, you have to set the hours straight. It's hard when there's no business, you close the door, and when there's customer, you stay a little. You cannot do that. Just keep a set of, a set business hours, so it's easier for us and easier for the community board and easier for your customers too, instead of closing random hours. And if he says midnight, I will amend the application to midnight, but I printed out and I gave him the police report, the complaints, and he said these are outside my operation hours, and I don't know what the basis for those complaints were. So I think it's best we get a letter from the sergeant, and it will explain a little in detail what the complaints were about.
Okay, thank you, Adam, because I'd like to move the agenda.
It says what the complaints are about. It says loud music and this, and I just want to make one more point. If it is 1 or 2 tenants who live in that building and they're legitimately having noise problems, then that's a problem. Like, I wouldn't expect it to be somebody who lives 2 blocks over. This is the very reason we have these are for the people who live in the vicinity. When we used to get signatures, we didn't ask for signatures in the Bronx.
We asked for them in the vicinity. Who's going to be impacted by these businesses? So to just blow people off who live in these buildings, that's not how things are gonna get fixed.
Thank you, Deb. We've heard enough on this application, and it needs to be resubmitted. So committee,
And you don't have to take a motion, right? Yeah, we do.
yes.
As I make a motion to deny until they resubmit. I'll second that.
Second, Jose, first, second, please call the roll.
Jose,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Ken, Jessica, David,
Yes.
John,
Aye.
Giselle, Nelson,
Yes.
Xavier,
Yes.
Isaac. Yes. Motion carried.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna move things along. Let's go. Number 3, slow. Diner Corp doing business is live, Anita. We can't identify that there is a church there. They provide all their documents. Yes.
Could they be talking about Mount Carmel Church?
It's too far, right? If they're on 2247, that would be on the other side, and Mount Carmel's in the, on 115th, right, closer to Pleasant.
The only church
There is
near
that.
there is in front of Thomas Jefferson.
Is it like a
That's not the
glacier?
other
No, there was a name, my Angel,
Right
I'm
in
sorry,
front of Thomas Jefferson.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, my phone died, but I think they put the name of the church in their, in our CB11 questionnaire, so maybe there is a church on the corner, isn't there, on 1/4?
There's a church in front of,
I think it had it was like a
Yeah.
glacier or something like that.
unless there's a new church, but the only church I know around there is in front of Thomas Jefferson, and that's way past 200 feet.
Stand by while we look at that.
And then the only other thing on
Yeah,
this
Holy
one,
Tabernacle.
which if they're not here, maybe we could just approve it without that change. I don't believe they had live music prior. I could be wrong though, but when I looked at 2021, I think it said DJs and recorded music was what had been, I guess, originally approved.
I think in the past, we can take a position to strike those items, approve, accept those items until they submit the appropriate paperwork for it. We can do that.
They list a church. 343 East 115th.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on the corner. I know the
Yeah,
church.
that's more than 200 feet.
It's across the street.
Yes,
343. Let me see, that's this one.
That's right across the street from Thomas Jefferson, no?
No, that's 114 in Thomas Jefferson. So that's not a church, though, it's a monument place. I mean,
Oh, where they sell like the headstones? and stuff?
yeah.
And then there's a funeral home.
What is it? 3,
Keep a lot, but
343, you said 115?
I was born.
there's no churches there. Angel just confirmed.
Okay.
So I'll entertain a motion. Question, Jesse?
Well, that's the church. No.
The only 311s were on the last step.
Okay, yeah, I would be inclined to move forward, and you're saying they asked for live music in the application?
I hate being like the only pair of eyes on something and then messing with somebody's business.
Yeah.
Angel, if you could just go to their 2021 renewal. I did, and I didn't see live music on there. And unless they came in this 2-year window for a method of operation, which I wasn't able to search it because the phone doesn't have the search function, then I don't think they're supposed to have live music. Not saying they can't come and ask for it and we wouldn't give it. But I could be wrong, so I don't want to say it and then we do it and they.
While he looks up that clarifying issue, number 4 applied to Corner Lounge 1 LLC doing business at Corner Lounge. They wanted to go till 4 AM just to preempt.
Well, they should be here tonight.
Yeah, are they here?
Well, they're new, so they should be.
Is it John Lynch?
I
Corner Lounge.
I don't know if it.
There's no
Yeah.
name there.
Does anyone have their hands up?
Yes.
John Lynch.
All right, so down real quick, hold on, John, we'll get to you. Background and DJ is what they have.
Then they shouldn't have live.
Okay,
So
so,
instruct them.
so we can approve. but
Without that.
Yeah, okay, then. Second, John, we're just taking a motion on number 3. Are you representing the Corner Lounge?
Yes, I am.
All right, then stand by. We'll come right to you in just a moment. Yes, I'll entertain a motion number 3.
I'll make a motion to approve with the subtraction of live music.
Okay, Madam, has made a motion to approve, minus or removing the live music portion, second by Jose, please call the roll.
Jose,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Adam,
Yes.
Jessica,
Yeah.
David, John, Giselle,
Yes.
Melissa,
Yes.
Xavier,
Yes.
Isaac.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries. Thank you very much. All right, we're gonna move on to the Corner Lounge One LLC doing business as the Corner Lounge. We have representation for the establishment, John Lynch. John? You may unmute yourself.
Good evening. How you doing, Xavier? Good to see everybody.
All right, good to hear you.
I'm here at the restaurant. The client's owner is in the kitchen if we need to pull him out. So this application did come before you last year, last June, and it was approved. My client had some concerns about the business at the time, coming out of COVID. So he kind of didn't want to commit to it, but now things are looking good and he wants to proceed forward with this wine and beer license. They've been in business here for a couple of years without any problems or incidents. The owner is a West African immigrant who lives in the area. And obviously the ability to serve wine and beer will be, quite helpful in him to maintaining a successful business.
Committee members, down.
What time do they currently stay open till?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure when they currently open. His view is if the business increases, which he expects it to do, that he would like to be open as late as he can to serve customers. I think last year you guys approved 4 AM, but it'll still just be wine and beer. So we're not talking about a club or a raucous bar scene.
Just confirming a bit of information, John. Hold
When I
on.
looked online, it said midnight.
4 o'clock.
Or
We do.
would they, can I ask? I mean, it's the first time they're gonna have the liquor license. I think a fair ask, and everybody can correct me if I'm wrong, but like maybe 2 AM on the weekends, 1 AM on the weekdays. And then, if that goes well and there are no 311s or complaints, we can then maybe talk about extending that possibly. But I think that might be a fair starting point.
Would it be acceptable to start at 2 across the board and see what happens then?
I don't, it's beer and wine, so yeah, I don't think it's a big deal. But 2 is a good start point. And then if there's no problems, maybe 4 is good too at some point.
Yeah, and John, to give you some background, we've had some really contentious licenses that did get an approval for later, and we've had significant problems and complaints from the neighbors. We really tried to turn a new leaf with good partnership, and I know as you served in CB10, that's very important, and that's a residential area, highly residential. So I would implore with this change and agreement on your end, once we take a position, that you work with the provider, the owner,
Absolutely.
to really do that community outreach and be responsive to any issues that may arise. That's how we build a better community, as you know.
Absolutely.
All right, so I've heard some amendments. Who would like to make a motion with the Adam?
I'll make a motion to approve Corner Lounge's new application for wine, beer, and cider license with the hours being adjusted from 4 AM to 2 AM, 7 days a week, the closing time.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table to approve the license for Corner Lounge One LLC doing business in Corner Lounge, located at 32 East 130th Street, the wine, beer, and cider until 2 AM. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Good step, the second. Call the roll, please.
Jose,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Dem, Jessica,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
John, Giselle,
Yes.
Melissa,
Yes.
Xavier,
Yes.
Isaac.
Okay. Motion carries. Thank you very much, Don. And I would implore the owner to actually come to our present at some point to Economic Development and Culture Committee, just to introduce themselves. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Dan, we're just gonna go through these. These are very straightforward,
Yeah.
3 permits, and then I'm gonna bundle whoever makes the motion as them meeting the criteria for providing materials versus not.
Okay, so I'm just gonna say the numbers if you guys want to follow along. 5 I believe had everything, and Angel, correct me if I'm wrong, 6 and 7 did not have everything, and just a point, I think they moved their event from July to August, if that means anything. 8, 9, 10, 11 have everything. I didn't see 12 on my thing, but I checked, I don't think they have everything, so 12 is missing stuff. 13, 14, and 15 do have everything.
13 is exempt from that.
Well, right, because they're a block part, right? 13 is a block party, and we have a thing where they haven't had a problem after a certain number of times, they are exempt, so that's.
Okay, wonderful. So I'll just read those back, real quick. 5, Common Justice Summer Celebration, number 76715. Have provided all documents. So therefore will be approved. 6 and 7, which are applications number 728-318, 728-216, did not, therefore would be recommended to deny. Number 8, which is Helio East to San Antonio, has applications number 718-612, 718-642 is number 9, number 10 is 718-659, number 11 is 718-675, and they provide everything, so to be recommended to approve. Number 12 did not provide Double Street Fair, that's number 726-502. Number 13, CMA Spanish Church Block Party, number 727-793 is exempt because they've satisfied over the first years. Number 14, St. Cecilia Parish, number 50th anniversary posted mass, number 726-557, provide all dogs, therefore recommended to approve. And number 15, Modest Helping Hands, Blood Health and Wellness event, number 725-698, provided all dogs. So I will entertain the motion at this time, unless there are any committee questions. Yes.
Just on number 9, it says the applicant is Lincoln Department sponsored union settlement. But that's correct. Just because the other one said something different. Okay.
Different sponsors for each.
Okay.
There's application.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve as, I'll make a motion to approve number 5. Do I have to read them out like that?
No, just 5 in approved, 6, whatever.
Right,
7, just
okay.
like that, call it.
So I make a motion to approve number 5, deny number 6 and 7, approve 8, 9, 10, and 11, deny 12, approve 13, approve 14, and approve 15.
Okay, again, has made a motion to approve 5, deny 6 and 7, approve 8, 9, 10, 11, deny 12, approve 13, 14, 15, and John, you have your hand raised. Second, please call the roll.
May I?
Yes.
One clarification. And I
Sorry.
think it's, I'm sorry. I just purposely over bundling them, I would prefer to bundle them all that was approving together.
No.
All that are not approving.
Yeah.
That's 2 separate votes, because you have conflicting votes.
No, because
In
we're
the process.
approving,
No, what I'm
approving a
saying.
denial or approving.
Right, so everything that we approve, we should approve together, and everything we deny, we should deny separately.
I'll rescind and make it separate.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go through the motion. If we're friendly to that, then go ahead and call the approvals.
Okay, so I make a motion for us to approve number 5, number 7, number 9.
No,
number-
so-
8.
5,
Oh, I'm sorry, number 5, number 8, number 9, number 10, number 11, number 13, number 13, 14, and number 15.
Okay, there is a motion on the table to approve the following item. 5, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, 14, and 15. And John, do second. All right, please call the roll.
Yes.
Jose, Stephanie,
yes.
Adam,
Yes.
Jessica,
Yes.
David.
Yeah.
John.
Aye.
Giselle.
Yes.
Elsa.
Yes.
Xavier.
Yes.
Isaac.
Yes.
Karen.
Okay.
And I'll make a motion to deny number 6, number 7, and number 12.
Okay, John.
Second.
Yeah. All right, there's a motion that for 6, to deny 6, 7, and 13.
12.
12, sorry, 12, sorry, 12. Getting tired, sorry, 12, and it was made by Dan Brion, second by John Green. Call the roll, please.
Yes.
Jose,
Yeah.
Stephanie. Adam.
Yes.
Jessica.
Yes.
David.
Yes.
John.
Aye.
Giselle. Elsa.
Yes.
Xavier.
Yes.
Isaac.
Yeah.
Kathy Barrett.
Thank you. Gonna move us on. Appreciate everyone. We had a lot of wealth of information. We're gonna do new business. This is really what's a very, very rudimentary draft. It's a work in progress. In my industry, we call it a vomit draft. So basically just throwing everything out. It is in your executive committee sandbox and it is taking a position. I'd like to see us, we could deliver something by October. It is a recommendation for a city charter amendment to give discretion for community boards to determine whether or not to hold virtual meetings for their committee meetings only, so long as they meet in person for their full board meetings. We find a high degree of functionality. Jose and I have had multiple conversations of that, as I have with other members. We found that when we're all tuned in, we get a lot more engagement with the public. People are participating, they're showing up, but there is the value add of being in the same room, same space together. We really get to absorb a lot more. And I think that we've seen element of what could be a positive change for this community, especially with so many that are homebound. And again, they're still logging in. So it is in its initial draft. It's a very early draft form. So what we have, go into executive committee folder in the G drive. You'll see the following recommendations for city charter amendment and the reasons. So I've had a crack at creating the document. I think Jess has gotten into it. Think holistically, add to the bullet points. And thank you, Jess.
Ignore the last bullet point. I deleted it and I was apparently too late.
It's okay. Don't worry about it. Add, and as you do, just as you go into it, just put edits added and the date. Then put them in edit form so they're color coded, so that way we can see them and we'll discuss them in September. This is our digital sandbox. Have fun. We all play nice. And let's create a really powerful document that we can advocate. Because the last city charter change, we saw a reduction of the strength of community boards with the policy administration, where they put us on 10-year term limits. So the other bit that was printed up, this has been put into economic development. It was not on the agenda. But it will be taken up over the summer with our new chair, who I'd like to welcome, Giselle. We also have Anne Marie Vasquez, who's agreed to join as our vice chair of EcoDAC. So they've got this document, which was presented by Eugene Rodriguez. I copied and pasted it, put it in there. I want everyone to get more accustomed to doing work in the digital space. And then when we have these meetings in person, we are bringing everything out into the light of day, so the public can engage and give us input. So that's really it. I'm not going to go into it deep. Call me, you got my number. I've got plenty of unfortunate work trips, so I will be on the road. So with that, there's nothing else. Does anyone else have any comments, questions? Yes, David, and then Angel.
So last week I learned, and I don't know, I reached out to Angel and both Xavier, they're not aware as well, that we learned that Cathedral High School, Catholic High School, is moving to the Marymount building. And Marymount apparently is leaving. We're not sure where they're going. But a lot of our agreement or disagreement with the Marymount project several years ago was, again, are they serving members of the community? Which they really haven't. But again, it's very distasteful to learn of such a major move. Now, I would say this in all fairness and disclosure, one of my children did go to the Cathedral. I do think this is a better neighborhood than 56, 57th Street and whatever it was, to have students who are, many of those students do represent kids in our own community. So I'm not unhappy about it, but again, it's discouraging that we are left out of such an important move. And that's a big move, you know, and the conditions that Marymount got to get the space is again not good.
Yeah, and I appreciate you calling that out. You're doing it. It's something that in September, youth and education should invite them and engage them and take positions. Angel.
I'm going to suggest now that the meetings are back in person that we revert back to votes by acclamation instead of going individual roll call.
I'm very pleased. So in other words, an example of that is Adem made a motion, John seconded, all those in favor, aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? And then President not voting for those conflicts of interest. I'm pleased to go back into that. And with the exception that anyone who's hybrid would need to be, who falls into extraordinary circumstances or disability clause would have to raise their hand to be recognized. Yes. Jose? Ready?
Yeah.
Yeah.
one, do we think we're meeting in August for executive? Two, how are we going to do as chairs here, right? Because we have a serious issue. I foresee in at least the first few meetings not to have one. Like, I'm going to plan a very light agenda. Are we doing something similar to what we did to full board in June, where we're trying to get a sense of who's coming for attendance? Because if I would hate to plan things out, have people come in and then and not have quorum, and it's gonna be very difficult. It's gonna be very difficult. People have been used to this for about 2-3 years now. This is transition. It's easy for the borough president to just be like, yeah, but most people, I think, will probably, now that they have this opportunity, it's gonna be a disaster. Like, we all know, 3/4 of the board is gonna be like, I have a medical condition, I can't do this, they're gonna sign up, so certified. So how do we plan for all this? Because it's gonna be, I don't wanna plan the agenda that I wanna plan and then not have quorum, have people present there and embarrass the board and our community in the process. And so, do we have that?
I mean, so hold on a second. So thank you, Jose. I think one of the things that, and when we had our conversation, is having a Zoom call to remind everyone of the expectations of what we're supposed to be doing as committee and community board members. That's important. I'm going to Borough Board tomorrow morning in person. One of the things Tommy did mention is a good rule of thumb, and she mentioned in the last Borough Board, was that if it's something that would allow you to work remotely at work under the disability clause, then it's something that would qualify you under open meetings. He says that's probably the best rule of thumb to apply.
It's like 99% of the people who qualify.
Yeah,
Even
well,
childcare is in.
no, but that's extraordinary. That's a separate law. That's a separate law. That's extraordinary. That's not the forum. I'll recognize in just a moment. That this is with the disability clause, right? So again, she's gonna send me the text they've used. We're gonna work on that in September and bring a position. I'd like to have a brief call with all the board members. We're gonna have our new assignments coming down. We're gonna select the committee members. I'll be reaching out to all of you, have conversations to hear what concerns are, people that you think may be an issue with attendance. But you have to program your, schedule your agenda in a way that can be productive, right? So that's partly on you. I'm here as the resource staff as well, and you gotta put things off quickly. Let me get John and then you step and then.
Another thing is that, the question is with full board meetings, are venues still are going to be willing to rent out their spaces? I remember in the fall of 2021, when they said things were getting better. Angel and Carly and the staff had a devil time trying to find venue. So the thing is that's going to be a major thing. If Khalid, Marlene and Angel gonna have a hard time, that's going to be a difficult thing for full board meeting.
I think and it's a valid concern. I know that the Museum of the City of New York was able to come up. We've Mount Sinai met with Brad Beckstrom today, and Brad Beckstrom has they'll hopefully have a decision in the coming weeks on whether or not they're opening up. And we're trying to, that's why we've got to get everyone back in the mindset that we have to meet in person. But our hospital systems, which used to host us, we're probably the last to that. But Silverman is another one, a few others, New York Academy of Medicine. Staff and then Nelson.
So a few things. I mean, we have to codify this in our bylaws first and foremost. So, I mean, I think once it's codified, then we can actually push forward and say, you're not in requirement or you are in requirement. I'm also afraid of what physical or mental impairment means, because that can mean a host of things. And if we don't have any other requirements, but just you have a physical or mental impairment at the time, and you're self-certifying, I don't see how any of us could say, no, you have to be at this meeting. I'm not worried so much about quorum. We'll have quorum because there'll be people, it's just not as, it's not as efficient. No, that's another thing though, like also, when will we let like our committee members know, like, you do have this option if you meet that requirement? And when are we gonna be like, okay, that's acceptable for September, that's acceptable for August?
Because we're September.
And how often do they have-
Hold on.
Yeah.
So again, once I have the language, I can share that with everyone. And one of the first calls I'm gonna make after borough board tomorrow is city law. City law is there to advise us on these matters. And I think once I can get more clarity on that, I do not want to be, and I'll come to you, David, after I go to Nelson. I don't want to be responsible having, you know, I don't want to have anyone's medical information. I don't want that liability. The staff should not have that liability. So I think that's very important. I think that us as leaders, as chairs of this board, and as it is incumbent upon us to set the example we want to see on our committees. That's on us. I'll be there anytime I can do. So that's part of what we're supposed to do. And these are great questions to be presented. Nelson and David.
Just a few things. I was gonna say that, you know, while I understand your concern, Jose, we still have to go forward, like, that everyone's gonna attend the meetings, even though we know that that's not likely, or people gonna still be afraid and stuff like that. That's the first thing. I would think that, the open meetings law would say what they consider physical and mental ailments, so that if we can see that as soon as possible, if we need to add it in. But I also think that this is an opportunity, right? So we call meetings because of what is stated now that we have to be in person, and we don't get the forums, and we don't get, then that is actual more information that we can share. Because if we're not meeting forum and we're not having people come in because of whatever reason, that will help support the positions that we would about potentially doing committee meeting virtually or doing full board in person. So this, as some as it sounds, it may actually be a help for us to actually get anecdotal data telling us what could work and what couldn't work. Because, for instance, some of us have we have different illnesses, right, where we have immune system problems. Not necessarily a big thing, but you may not want to come into a room with someone because if you have an immune deficiency, that is what considered physical if it's defined. So, you know, I agree with Stephanie and I agree with everyone that has voiced an opinion. But I think we still have to move forward like we are, but I think these concerns are definitely stuff for you to bring up tomorrow.
So this is your comments on taking the borough board right now. After everyone, I'm gonna go to you, David. I think another thing to keep in mind, a lot of the other boards, CB1, 2, 12, they've all gone back in person. So and a lot of them have not incorporated bylaw changes yet, either. I think we're gonna get ahead of the 8 ball that way. So I would, but if you have thoughts, feedback, you can call me.
I don't know. I'll wait. I just have one more point. I think we need to get better on attendance then, if we're gonna be doing this, because we've been kind of, and even myself, we've been kind of like all over the place when it comes to attendance. And we're not holding anyone accountable.
That is the next protocol.
Well,
That's important.
That's
So, David.
too, right? So. What I heard when I asked, you know, it was general. It was not going to be listed, she determined the ball board, that it could be, so again, we're relying on the good faith and goodwill of people, and then to Stephanie's point, if we're having quorum comes and we can be on Zoom. Well, you know, again, then what do I have to come if I can say I have some condition? And if everybody has a condition and only the chair is in the room, are we able to run a meeting? Like, can we have 10 members at home with conditions and sit here and run a meeting? Is that quorum?
Yeah.
She clarified, she said, until we pass our bylaws, amend our bylaws, no. Per the law, we do, but we have to amend our bylaws as that's what defines our attendance.
So why not just keep it the way it is? And let it be live if people come and let them be on Zoom. I mean, because what we're doing is we're creating a bottleneck almost of people, right? And I mean, I don't know, it just seems, if you can just put. When do I have to do it every month? Do I have to do it every week? Right? Because people may not have a diagnosis or documentation. Are they then going on their own? how I feel today. I mean, I'm a social worker, right? This is my world. And we don't play with that. In order to get Medicaid, in order to get Social Security, you gotta have a diagnosis. And what we're saying here is just put up whatever you want to say without any documentation is a problem also.
As soon as I get the language, I will forward it to executive committee, okay?
Last thing.
Yes, last thing and then what?
One big thing, big thing, I mean, this is election year, so we're not gonna do it before then, but we're gonna have to be real, like something said, like by December, if people are not certifying and they're just missing committee and I'm missing, we gotta boot them. Cause this board has been so frustrating with removing. And we can't play like that. If you've missed 4 meetings or whatever it is, we gotta hold this executive committee. The standard, we have to remove whoever needs to be removed, regardless of what. They can reapply when they get their life together, whatever it is. But I mean, sometimes we've had people here for years. When I became secretary, I removed someone that was like absent for like 2 years, 2-3 years, and he kept saying like. And then he eventually got back on, but then he left. But anyway, that was the big thing. The 2 little things, my birthday's August 9th, wanted that on the record. Harold Smith Jr. versus Terrence Crawford next weekend. One of the best fights in the last 10 years. Unifying a welterweight never happened before in boxing. I'm leaning toward Crawford. I wanted that in the record.
All right.
I love both.
Okay, thank you. Angel, and then we're gonna do the roll call on.
Like 2 minutes.
15, yes, Angel. Angel.
And it's just like we're voting on something that we really inform, and it's just presentation.
Dr. Mina, they're not here.
But even to start the
Yeah,
meeting,
guys, Angel has the floor. Go ahead, Angel.
Just gonna say, that, like, so what some of the guys, what some of y'all were kind of alluding to. It comes down to you have to set expectations. Communicate that to each other and then. Expect only that people will act as adults. If people are gonna not act like adults, then the other adults have to figure out what to do about it. My concern as staff is I have to schedule meetings externally. I have to coordinate with the folks that are gonna be doing the live streaming and the hybrid meeting stuff. So I need to know absolutely that if we say the meeting is on the 1st, that I can then know the meeting's gonna be over here, and then I know who I have to have in the room to help the meeting go off the way that you all are expecting. If the board is going to be overly lenient or too flexible because somebody had a cold or someone's not in the mood to come to a meeting, that's not gonna work, because then I'm gonna take up someone's time with renting a room, having their staff present, having their AV staff, their security, then bringing our people in that we're hiring and paying to be there. That's not professional. So whatever is going to be established needs to be clear. Right? Not overly lenient. And I think there has to be an expectation that notification be given by a drop dead time in advance.
Right.
Last minute's not gonna work, or it's gonna create problems. I'll repeat what I said last month. We lost a vendor because we were bouncing around with whether we would have a meeting or not. So that's out now. Now I gotta go find somebody somewhere in time for September meetings, which I'll do, but whomever we contract, or whomever, we come to an agreement with, is gonna wanna know that, hey, if I put on my schedule that I'm gonna do this for this, organization, then that day I'm getting my money. But if we cancel the meeting, are they getting them? You know what I mean? So like, it can't be that folks are gonna be allowed, it shouldn't be that folks are gonna be allowed to say at the last minute, or, I'm in a bad mood, I'm not coming to the meeting. Or to be frankly childish and not be respectful of the other 50 members of the 49 other members of the board, the staff and the public that's gonna be attending these meetings, right? So let us know in advance, I don't think y'all should be asking whether, what illness somebody has. That's a terrible idea. But that if the person is if members are being entrusted and respected as adults to conduct themselves as such, then they should. And if they don't, well, then shame on them. And if it becomes a problem for the board, then to what Jose is saying, then the board should strongly consider enforcing its existing rules for the betterment of the board's operations, not to, pick on this member or that member, but, without the expectations and without enforcement of it, you continue to have problems. So like what David was alluding to, if you don't have, rules in place, then you're gonna have, anarchy, and then it's a problem, and it's an embarrassment to the board, right, in terms of our time, and also will keep us from being effectively doing our work, which is the whole point of this, right? Yeah, but like, we're too lenient with attendance, incredibly lenient with attendance, right? I don't even bother mentioning it anymore. But there's all kinds of people in the red. Right, and that's on them, right? Like they as individuals, right? They as individuals should respect their fellow board members. Who are taking the time to attend, right? If you have a thing, you have a conflict, you have a conflict. But if it's just like for, not serious reasons, then, then step off the board, right? And don't waste people's time.
Thank you. And to that end, Michelle actually prepared a presentation with attendance to cover all the people who are in the red. Unfortunately, she could not be here this excuse for reasons that can't be disclosed. So we are going to agenda on, but we will have in September. It is up. Hey, Jose, everyone, it is up to you to wrangle your members when you get them assigned, call them up, explain the expectations. Well, again, you have fun with that, right? Yeah. So that's what it's incumbent upon on it. How many people are here tonight from our committee? We have 12 members, we have 10 here. That's enough of an incentivization to say, guys, almost all of the executive showed up. So we have the same expectations. That's on every member of this table. So thank you for setting the example.
There were no snacks, no food.
Stop asking me about food. Stop asking me about food.
Let's go ahead.
It's not fair, because I get pointed out like it's my responsibility. No, it's not. Okay, just in fairness. Why? It's not. I'm just looking at you.
Okay, let's call the roll, please. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Jose, second by John. All those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Yeah, motion carries.
Party around.
Yeah, I would-